The YouTube content creators have been putting Assassin's Creed Shadows in the spotlight for quite a while, but this spotlight has been pretty freaking black. And now we have content creators like the upper echelon talking about some of the controversies in the game that other content creators like myself have been trying to showcase. But some of those content creators, they actually have been going quite too far. And I have noticed this too. Where the upper echelon makes amazing points, he also gets some things wrong. And we will have to agree to disagree. So definitely in this video, guys, we're going to take a look what he says, absolutely analyze it from the most objective perspective that I can muster myself as a gamer, as someone that has been playing Assassin's Creed since the very freaking beginning. I'm one of those people that totally hates woke stuff, but also can recognize what we had before the woke stuff and how a lot of what we now deem being woke wasn't. That is because woke now kinda lost its meaning, and we should be able to recognize what really is woke and what it isn't. But firstly, the upper echelon is one of the most accurate, the most objective people on YouTube. He doesn't like to just blow up by doing drama that has no basis at all. He likes to be critical, he likes to think critically, and he's trying to be objective, something that not all YouTubers do. And I personally love him for that and respect him for that. But in this video, actually, I think I would disagree with him. And of course, agree, but also disagree on some fundamental points that I think he kind of missed the broader perspective of, which is surprising to me, but hey, here we are. So let's listen to his video and I'm going to address everything that he says in it. Let's go.
Today's video is probably going to make some people angry, but quite frankly, I really don't care because in my view, Assassin's Creed Shadows is getting a ridiculous and excessive amount of hate from the gaming community, a lot of which it just doesn't actually deserve. Now, just to get something straight from the very beginning, there certainly are a multitude of things to criticize about the game, some of which I'll discuss soon, but for some reason, I have suspicions about what those reasons are, but for right now, that's less important. For some reason, this game is now a lightning rod for what feels like the most absurd, vitriolic, and asinine critique that I've seen from the video game community in years, with a certain cohort of creators and their dedicated fans grasping at every single straw that they can find in order to reinforce the narrative that this game is a colossal failure. Spoiler, it's not. I wouldn't call it Game of the Year, not by any stretch. Ghost of Tsushima was better, obviously, but it's got a few things going for it, with marginal success in tow. And I think it's important to acknowledge that Ubisoft is in a bit of an unwinnable situation. For years, people have claimed that their development cycle is stagnating, they lack innovation, and never break new ground. But at the same time, with Shadows, when they appear to actually try and correct those issues, they get slammed for making changes that people don't like, with some of the fastest moving goalposts that I've ever seen. It's not even goalposts at this point. It's just an infinitely expanding target, where everything they do is bad and the game is a terrible failure, even though it's objectively not. I was actually in Japan when this game came out. I absolutely loved it there, by the way. Everything positive that I've heard about the country is 100% true. Assassin's Creed Shadows has finally released, and believe it or not, I'm about to defend the game, to a degree. Here's the format. I'm going to start by giving an example of valid criticism, and then I'm going to complement that example by showcasing something which is, in my opinion, invalid. I'll go back and forth a little bit, a few times at least. By the end of it, hopefully, I'll have made my case that while there are certainly good reasons to refuse supporting the game, or Ubisoft for that matter, generally speaking, this extremely vocal and seemingly growing subset of the gaming community, primarily the anti-woke content creator sphere and their followers, have completely lost the plot, as they now scream about things which hold zero merit simply because they are incapable of self-reflection, intellectual honesty, or admitting that none of this ever had anything to do with real principles. This was about clicks. It was about ad revenue in particular, in much the same way that crowd has now gone totally silent on the subject of Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which was a massive financial success and Game of the Year contender as well. They'll probably go silent about Shadows sometime soon.
I want to intervene. Kingdom Come Deliverance, what they did with the gay stuff, I don't think that it's supposed to be in the game, but besides that one choice that you may never see if you're actually a straight player and don't want to see these things, you'll never know if there was not the internet to tell you about it. So, from that point of view, yes, it's an RPG. Yes, you will never probably see it anyway if you're a straight player, if you don't actually want to do that in the game. There are some gay people that will never see it because they will never choose those options. Also, I mean, there are actual people that will do that and they're still gay. The fact that you have a certain sexuality in life doesn't mean that you want to actually participate in that in the game. I also don't really like romance in games and I would rather skip it. I just want to be a warrior, whatever the game premise and character is, just immerse myself in that world. Did the studio put this there? Yes. Why did they put it there? Well, as far as we understood, they put it there because they just wanted to do like a fan service because some of the people that are vocal that they're one of those people that always try to ship characters, male characters, female characters together. They're usually the same people that push always for those things. They're usually those that really want to see that, even if they're not gay or whatever. Well, they cater to those people, and I don't think that is quite right because they're a very small minority. And in this kind of a context, medieval, all those things, these two characters, historical figures, you shouldn't really go there. Just like leave it alone, you know. So that's a mistake. But are we supposed to condemn the whole game because the developers did this? No, I don't think so. Because once again, this does not affect your experience. You will never freaking see it. They should have done that, but that doesn't mean that we have to hit them with rocks. That's what I want to say. There are some content creators that push this and they actually lost all objectivity. Of course, they are. But what the upper echelon is going to address here, some of the things, I do think that he is wrong. But we're going to get to that.
Because it simply isn't the failure that they claim. And thus, the most important part of all of this, it can't be used as a bludgeon against whatever target they pick next time. Let's get to it. First example of what is, in my opinion, extremely valid criticism. Yasuke, the joint main character, protagonist of the game, absolutely sucks. Ubisoft, more so than probably any other entry in the Assassin's Creed franchise, tiptoed a lot closer this time to the idea of historical accuracy, choosing, for the first time ever, I think, to make an actual historical figure playable. Just one problem, and I have an extremely detailed other video about all of this, which I'll link down below. Just one problem, which is that Yasuke appears to be a sort of highly exaggerated fan fiction construct from the mind of a single individual historian named Thomas Lockley. The specifics are difficult here, but the gist of it, without making the video 45 minutes long, is that Thomas Lockley spent a tremendous amount of time and effort single-handedly propping up a sort of legendary samurai status for Yasuke, which doesn't really exist, we don't think. As a result, combined with the fact that Ubisoft has been more vocal about historical accuracy this time than pretty much ever before, the community began rightly criticizing the inclusion of Yasuke, especially under these suspect parameters, which I believe is the seed from which this overwhelmingly negative discourse originated. See, to me, that's valid criticism, especially for people who actually understood the specifics pre-release. However, that was then and this is now, which are decidedly different situations because now the game has actually been released. It turns out you can basically just not play as Yasuke. The joint main character feature that Ubisoft has now further emphasized compared to previous entries in the series lets you swap in and out pretty much at will, which makes it so that instead of using the wildly out of place, historically disputed, bumbling, clunky, Hulk-esque brawler, which feels completely asinine in the world of Assassin's Creed, you can just play as Nawi. Nawi is the other playable main character, the shinobi. She's quick, agile, solid voice acting, decent animations. Some of them are really good, actually. Some of the cutscenes and animations are great, and then other times they stand out in a weird way, but overall, I'm pleasantly surprised. And if you took this game, right, this is the important part, if you took this game, literally just deleted Yasuke, just deleted him completely, and then relaunched it afterward, I don't think there would be even a fraction of the hate that it's currently getting.
Probably won't. There's still some problems with the game though, like, and now I can climb as well. Some of the surfaces, you can see that on my streams here. I just want to go through the forest, but there's literal landslides put there, so you can't climb. You have to sometimes like go on a side and then forward and on the side to try to trick the game and somehow climb, but that works almost never. So this is something that an Assassin's Creed game is unthinkable. You should be able to climb everywhere you want to, especially with Naue, who is the assassin of this game. And they literally placed wooden boards on some of the trees so you can climb them. I'm like, what? I'm just supposed to be climbing the tree. I don't need the visual representation of where I'm supposed to be putting my hands so I can climb. It's ridiculous. This was something that we can see in Horizon Zero Dawn, the first game, but even there you can climb a lot of surfaces, so I just don't get it. That is a huge minus from the game. Otherwise, I am pleasantly surprised by how Naue is in the game. I mean, she talks politely, her facial expressions are good, her voice acting is good. If we are supposed to be complaining about her voice acting and her facial expressions, that's fake to me. You either don't see that they're actually good. This is open world game, by the way. It's not supposed to be a level of Uncharted, and Uncharted is an older game now, but it's not a fully open world game. They are able to put more facial animations and focus more that the story is more linear, the story is more focused, the game is smaller, all of those things. In an action game that has no open world like Real One, they're putting more graphics there, they're putting more musculature on the face so it can represent the actor's performance better. So Assassin's Creed is not one of those games. They did a very good job with Naue, how she speaks, how she behaves. She has real honor. She has real character to her and qualities to her, noble ones. She's not a annoying girl boss. She actually had to learn to be what she is.
But see, that's an issue because why on earth, in a post release environment where we now understand the distinctly different playstyles of these two characters, with the added impact of not really being required to play very much as whichever one you dislike, why are we still clinging to the fact that Yasuke sucks in order to say the game is a total failure? I agree wholeheartedly that Yasuke is garbage. He can barely climb walls, he doesn't even have eagle vision. Navigating the world with him is a chore, and watching him run through solid wood castle doors is just a complete joke. It's somebody's power fiction fantasy type thing, and it's just decidedly stupid, okay? Especially because he doesn't even have a silent assassination in Assassin's fucking Creed. But guess what? Nobody has to play as him. For anyone who likes the idea of a playable character that has less utility, less movement, and basically hulks out in the middle of feudal Japan in a way that makes literally no sense whatsoever, go right ahead, okay? All power to you. But as with pretty much everything else in this game, it is optional. Back when the game was still on the horizon, when we didn't know what it would eventually look like, criticizing it over the impending debacle of Yasuke feels kind of doable or defensible. Some people certainly went overboard to that effect, and it's very clear to me now that there were actual some racist undertones to the argument for a few people.
I don't think there was actual racist comments. The problem is that, yeah, Yasuke is not supposed to be there. Ubisoft were not supposed to do this because it makes no freaking sense. All the Assassin's Creed games before that never actually used a historical figure to be a protagonist. They didn't. And instead of making the game like they originally wanted to make it with an actual Japanese samurai, who could have been also an assassin. So we could have an actual male Japanese protagonist that could be set in a historical time, but he himself could be totally made up. We could have had the same formula as the other Assassin's Creed games because it works, because it makes sense, because it's great, because it's fun. But no, they decided to push the narrative that Yasuke was a real samurai, firstly, then tried to pull back from that. Then they tried to present the game historical accurate game or something like that for a brief time, for a moment, and that just fell flat on its face. The only reason that Yasuke is there is just for diversity quotas and yes, woke reasons. That's exactly why he is there. He has no history to him. There's one page of history about him. He was just a retainer. He fled Japan when Oda Nobunaga died. He didn't commit seppuku like a real samurai would. So there's a lot more evidence that he wasn't a samurai, that he was a samurai, if you want to talk about historical accuracy. And so ironic that although Ubisoft have put him there, they totally neglected him as a character in the game. They pushed him on the side, they made him slow, they made him useless in some situations. They didn't make him an assassin, so they totally disrespected his character and just left him being this bulky guy in feudal Japan who's not supposed to be there at all. So they disrespected Yasuke and they still wanted him in the game. Just doesn't make any freaking sense, guys. It's so ironic that they did that. But the criticism that Yasuke is there by content creators is just totally valid. He's not supposed to be there. And the fact that Ubisoft decided to put him there and make poo-poo on the game, they did that. It's a fact. And they tried to go back on that, so they put him now like a secondary character you can only get to after about 8 or 10 hours playing the game, and then you make him useless in a lot of situations because he cannot climb. Now I cannot climb in some situations, and now Yasuke can climb even less than now. It's just so dumb. But the fact that it's optional and you can just skip him later, because the beginning you do start with him, so you cannot skip that. I mean, I don't want to skip that. I wanted to experience how he plays, me personally, but the point is that you can't skip him at the beginning. He's a part of the tutorial. But then, who cares if you can skip him later? But he's already there, like the damage is done, and now they're just trying to minimize the damage. That's a fact. He's there. He's not supposed to be there. That's the point.
But before we knew what the game really was, concern over Yasuke's implementation in that world felt much more understandable. However, now that we see what Ubisoft has actually made, why are people so angry over the existence of choices? This is an RPG. You can dislike Yasuke and then not play him.
Yes, choices are great, but they already pooped the pants by putting him there. He's not supposed to be a choice. He's not supposed to be anything, anywhere in the game. That's the point. He's not supposed to be there, and for us to have a choice to not pick playing with him, well, it's great that we have that, but the point is he's not supposed to be there in the first place. That's why people are angry, that he's even there.
In fact, for anyone who was concerned over Yasuke subtracting from the traditional Assassin's Creed atmosphere, which he does, why is the outrage still there? Just play as the actual assassin. Case closed, right? I find it exceedingly strange now, and I don't know when precisely the shift happened. Sometime recently, but I couldn't put my finger on when. But people now appear to be viscerally angry that a choice they don't like even exists in the first place. I can understand that outrage when the player is forced to do something, but when did we switch over from don't force me to play as something I don't want to in a franchise where I have certain expectations to don't you dare even create something I don't like, even if I never have to engage with it hardly at all?
Well, exactly. They're not supposed to do that because it does not align with Assassin's Creed as a franchise, is how they do the games usually. Because when they focus on a native character, they focus on a native character. We are in Assassin's Creed Origins. We have Bayek. He's an Egyptian guy in Egypt. We have Assassin's Creed 1, 2. We have Ezio Auditore. We have Altair. Then it's in Baghdad. Then we have in Italy Ezio Auditore, and he's Italian. Then we have a Native American, Assassin's Creed 3, who is literally from America, and he is half English, half Native American. It's great, it's awesome, it fits everything, it's perfect. We have Vikings that are actual Vikings in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. We have Greek people that are in a Greek game in ancient Greek times. So this is the first time that we are in a country and we have just one Japanese protagonist. If you're going to have two, make them both from there. It just makes sense. That is how it always has been in Assassin's Creed. So I don't know if the upper echelon play the other games, but they are breaking the mold, and not in the good way. We as Assassin's Creed fans, we do not like that. Do not. I'm saying it with a funny accent, but yes, we don't like it. We like it when you have a country, you pick the character, you have a country, you pick someone from that country to play the protagonist. Is this that hard? So yes, we don't like having the choice of not playing with Yasuke because he's there in the first place. We don't like him to be there. And that's why people are outraged by default, and they keep being outraged because this guy is not from there. He wasn't a samurai. This whole thing is pushed forcefully. And yes, this is the definition of wokeness. That is why.
Why is that happening? In my view, and this is purely just personal opinion, criticism or outrage over Yasuke has rapidly become invalid now. Perhaps on the subject of historical accuracy based on prior statements for a small subset of the player base, it might still matter, but Assassin's Creed is intrinsically fictional. time travel, aliens. I won't go down the road of animus lore here, but historical accuracy in any real sense of the word is kind of a non starter. People seem very concerned about how Yasuke can romance certain other characters or how there's a non binary interaction of some kind. And I would agree with people if any of that was ever forced on the player.
I'm sorry, upper echelon, but this time you're very wrong. We are not supposed to have non-binary characters. We're just not supposed to. Why they're there? If not to push woke agenda. They're exactly there for that purpose. This is obvious. There were no non-binary characters before these modern times, like the past few years, when we first heard of non-binary. No one identified themselves as non-binary before, like, what, COVID? I mean, I'm not sure how many years now since that term was first created and started being used, but we have no concept of that before. We do have a concept of people who think they're either men or women, basically having a real diagnosable gender dysphoria. We did have such people, but we did not have non-binary. And it's not supposed to be in the game. So once again, something that's sticking like a sore thumb. And it's very suggestive the way that it's made by the quest. This character, Ibuki or whatever, he is flirting with Yasuke. They are trying, I mean, he is trying to pick him up, so to speak. And we are the player that is playing with Yasuke if we choose to play with Yasuke, so to speak. But even if we don't, whatever, it's not supposed to be in the game. What is there to not understand? Modern identity politics should not be in the game. Should not be in a game that presents ancient stuff. If this is a game about representing today's world, and we are like in the modern Assassin's Creed time with modern assassin, and there's non-binary character that reflects the current time, this would be totally more understandable. It still shouldn't be in the game because it's so freaking lame, and it's basically like showing, hey, look, this is a particular mental illness that we're showing. It would fit a lot more than what we see here in Assassin's Creed Shadows. You have to understand this. Woke stuff are still real. And there are still some things that are really woke. And that is one of those things.
But Ubisoft put in an entire separate mode of the game called canon mode. You can select an experience that removes those choices entirely from the main menu before you even start the overall experience, which leaves me baffled, honestly, because people are still genuinely outraged over the existence of characters and choices that they never even have to basically see.
But who's gonna put like the game in canon mode? Who? I mean, you just like to experience the game as it is. Why would you put it in canon mode? Most people wouldn't do that. And I like action games and I can totally play the game without actually choosing anything. And I'll probably still not even use that setting. I'll just play the game as it is. I am gonna see freaking Ibuki. And I want to see the choices that I can make in the game. Although I did see in some YouTube videos that people are showing some of the choices are actually absolutely redundant. And when you choose like to kill someone, you kill them. And then if you choose to not kill them, you still kill them, which is ridiculous. That is not how it was in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Valhalla. When you choose something there, you actually have quest that leads to that choice. And then you have another quest that leads to that choice. So it's amazing. I really don't know how you don't understand this, Upper Echelon.
Feel free to chime in down below in the comment section if you want to, but how does that really make sense? I could talk about this for quite some time. For anyone who's not aware of this, I used to criticize games often for shoehorned diversity and political narratives like 7 or 8 years ago. And now watching this new age of anti-woke content creator basically parrot watered down or much less articulated talking points well and truly after the tide seems to have shifted feels kind of weird. At the
Well, I'm sorry, but there are still valid points to be made here. So yeah, some content creators like myself that are trying to just call it like it is. When it's woke, it's woke. When it's not woke, it's not woke. Just by having a woman protagonist in the game doesn't make a game woke. For example, it doesn't. But if you make this woman have no character, having everything come to her, she being a Mary Sue, no character growth, she can just do anything without any explanation about that. She's just being condescending towards male characters, or whatever, that's freaking stupid and woke. And where it is woke to say that times are changing and we're moving past that, yeah, we are moving past that to an extent, but there's some games that are already made, like Assassin's Creed Shadows, that already interjected those things. They not just gonna delete them because Trump is president, at least not right now, because the game is already completed by the time that he was a president, and they cannot just delete all quests. Maybe they can, but they really would not want to.
Same time, that was 7 or 8 years ago, so maybe I just grew up. Anyway, criticism of Yasuke in some respects is understandable.
No, I think that you also lost the plot, Upper Echelon, unfortunately. You didn't just grow up. I also see when something is not woke and when something is, but you still gotta remain freaking objective here. Maybe you're just sick of it because it has been repeated over and over and over again. And sometimes they do have merit and sometimes they don't, but to say that they just don't because it's an RPG and choices, sorry, you just missed the other angle that I just mentioned. You still have to go align with what the games are supposed to be. You still have to go align with the way that they were made and they're still being made. Just look at the last game, Valhalla. There were some elements there that could be considered woke, but the whole game was a solid game. And yes, it was based on choice, and nothing really was there that to stick out like a sore thumb. You were free to make the choices, but they didn't stick a non-binary character there or a gay character just out of nowhere. Context of why you're doing something is everything, and the context here that they did all those choices in Assassin's Creed Shadows just do not hold.
And certainly was understandable. But now, post release, it feels a little bit more hollow, and in my opinion, invalid. What's next? Next is cultural.
Well, okay, yeah, like I've said, it's valid. I'm not gonna stop like at everything because I already explained what he's about to say. But yeah, like I explained, it's valid because what I explained.
Respect, which is a tricky one because I'm not Japanese. Having recently been there for a few weeks, thankfully, I'm also not the type of person who assumes to know everything about a place that I merely visited and barely scratched the surface of. Despite having recently been there, I'm just flatly not qualified to speak on this, but I'll try to keep it confined within the portions that I do know and somewhat understand. Having talked about Yasuke, including some of the choices that can be made with him, which pertain to real historical figures, some of them, if those are what people find to be offensive, I would once again like to mention canon mode, which is purpose built to remove all of that from your experience entirely. But beyond that, there's a lot of blunders that Ubisoft has made. At one point, they were using incorrect samurai clan symbols. They used material that they didn't own the copyright for, which was a pretty big blunder. They had a one-legged torii gate on a figurine of Yasuke, which is closely tied to an iconic shrine in Nagasaki. And more recently, the topic of shrines came into question itself after a clip went viral on social media of Yasuke destroying one of them in-game. This is where it gets tricky. Ubisoft has very obviously made blunders here, but let's focus on the shrine angle more specifically, because that one seems to be the most high profile, even attracting a response from the Japanese Prime Minister. For starters, Yasuke is a joke of a character. He literally runs through things, destroying them in a way that makes him totally abhorrent to me in a game about stealth and assassination. But with that out of the way, right, just being super clear on it, a large portion of the in game world itself is a destructible environment. There was no mission to destroy that shrine. It was simply the product of someone choosing to do so, and immediately following the backlash over all of this, Ubisoft announced a day one patch that would make certain portions of the game world non destroyable. Certain NPCs and specific sections of buildings will no longer be part of the overall destructible environment, but let's take a minute here and just be honest with ourselves, okay? Is this really some sort of insane cultural disrespect on the part of Ubisoft? Think about it. They made a fully populated game world, and then small items in that game world are destructible. That's just a basic framework. That's it. Because of that blanket development technique for the entire world, you could, not forced to, or ever even incentivized to, by the way, you optionally could, if you went and found it in order to do so, you could destroy the objects inside a shrine. And when confronted over this, which they were, with a statement from the Prime Minister about disrespect, there was a day one patch to solve it. Does that really sound like big bad Ubisoft is intentionally disrespecting culture? Because I don't really see it that way. Funnily enough, most people that I see getting outraged by this are doing so on behalf of Japanese culture when they themselves have no part of it. So again, I'm not qualified to say where the line should be drawn.
What the there, guys? I mean, Yesterday on the stream, someone asked us if what do we think, me and my friend Logan, if they make like Assassin's Creed Bulgaria or something. Firstly, they probably will not do that because Bulgaria is not that famous. It's not like Greece. Still, we do have a lot of rich history that they could use, but they probably will not do that. Now, if I see that you can just destroy, let's say, a Christian temple with a lot of icons of the Mother of Jesus and Jesus, I will not agree to that. Okay, I don't want to see that in the game. I think that is where the line should be drawn. If there's a temple, just make it beautiful, make it how it's supposed to be. Don't make it destructible. Just leave it as it is. Just let it be there. Depending on what time we're talking about, because Bulgarians were not Christian, they were just pagan before they became Christian. So if you do that before, which maybe is going to be more interesting, then just do that. If you do that after, and we actually have Christian temples, you shouldn't be messed with that. You just shouldn't. I know it's a video game, but why would you do that in the first place? Just don't make it destructible. It's gonna look very ugly, and someone will do it, just on purpose. Respect that some things are good to be just left alone and not be disrespected like that. I mean, because this is an ability they do have to make purposely so it can be in the game. So why not just spare your efforts and don't do it? We also don't want to be able to do certain things to people in games. That's horrible. So games are not doing that. And that is a boundary that most games are keeping. Most games, almost all games, are keeping some brutality off that you can actually do if they wanted to, but they're not doing that because it's sick. A fantasy is not about being evil. The fantasy is being a hero most of the times. Yes, you can go in GTA and steal and kill. You can go in Kingdom Comes Deliverance, be a serial killer. Okay, that's fine. But the way that you do it is just really basic and don't actually do anything that would be considered that disturbing. Visually, how they make it, I mean. So there are boundaries that should be kept. You can be a serial killer if you want, but just don't dismember people, don't do nasty things to them in the game. Those options should not be there because then you are catering to what? A psycho player or whatever that actually likes that. Maybe it's a real criminal in real life, who knows? So maybe not put sick in the head things in games, and also don't like destroy religious things, because to some people that is going to be very disrespectful, and it's not a part of being a hero, it's not a part of anything really positive. So why do that? I mean, I don't respect all religions, me personally. There are some religions that to me are very demeaning to the human being, and that's not something that God actually said. That's something that people made up from their own asses for their own agendas. That's a long topic, but the point is that I still don't want to cross a line for like no reason. So better just leave that alone and don't make it possible for any shrine of any kind to be destroyed. Just be there. Let's be like a decoration. Let's just sit there. And that's it. Just leave it be. Okay? Leave it be. Like destroy everything else if you must. But if you have a church or something, a temple, a shrine, just leave it like it is. It's supposed to be like a beautiful thing to look at, a cultural thing. In most religions, temples look very beautiful. They're amazing in an architectural way. Just appreciate them for what they are architecturally, when it comes to art as well, and just leave them like that. So even from a perspective from art, just don't destroy that. Just don't. And some people did give this example of that in one of the Assassin's Creed games, you can kill the Pope. Yeah, but the Pope could be actually a hidden bad guy. So that's totally different. Religion, shrines, temples, those things live on their own. And having a person that's a religious guy, or even the highest one possible, which is in this case the Pope, if he's an evil guy, he pretends to be a man of God, and he's an evil guy, and we can kill him in the game. That's different. So we know those people exist. We can totally kill them in the game. It's fine. They do not represent God. If they're actually evil, we can kill them. It's fine. But shrines where everyone can like pray and for them to be a sacred place, that's for everyone. You don't touch that. That's for everyone. So that is how we can make the difference between, yes, we can kill the Pope, who cares if he's actually evil, but no, we can't touch what is a representation of people's faith in general. We shouldn't. Why would we? Just don't touch that. Leave it alone. It's okay. Not everything needs to be destroyed in a game. You can be a hero, you can kill everyone, but don't touch Don't touch something that's for everyone.
But a destructible world being made by a major development studio, like a blanket destructible world across the entire game, with no incentive to target certain areas, which also happen to fall under the same mechanical guidelines, and then fixing the issue as soon as true dissatisfaction is expressed, doesn't really feel like some sort of insane disrespect on the part of Ubisoft. Again, they've made blunders that they can certainly be criticized for. But in Assassin's Creed 2, you literally take down the Pope. It's not like Ubisoft is coming out of the woodwork here and doing something with the explicit goal of snubbing people's faith. To be fair, I'm not telepathic, so I guess I shouldn't say that with absolute certainty. But I just can't picture this being intentional. I see carelessness, not animosity. How about another one? Microtransactions. On the list of things that warrant criticism, this is probably my go to example, and Ubisoft sucks when it comes to monetizing their games. Assassin's Creed Shadows is a full priced, greedily monetized format with a full shop and all sorts of additional techniques for extracting what's called recurrent user spending. Of course, microtransactions in general are a foregone conclusion now. We lost that battle decidedly as a gaming community. But Ubisoft goes a few steps further, right? They always like creep a little bit down that road. I think it was Odyssey where they first did something like this, but they actually appeared to have throttled down the experience rewards, right, for Odyssey in that game, and then remedied the self inflicted problem by selling a permanent 50% XP boost in the microtransaction shop. That's insane.
Do not agree with the microtransaction. Absolutely do not agree. Yeah. I agree with the upper echelon here. Yes.
And I will never step in to defend them for shit like that. But as much as I dislike the monetization mechanisms for Shadows as well, the fact that they focus so heavily on recurrent user spending through microtransactions is a really interesting segue into some invalid criticism. There's a group of content creators, I'm not going to mention them by name, their audiences are exceedingly irritating lately, but there's a group of creators who are repeatedly claiming that Assassin's Creed Shadows is a financial failure. Disregard the fact that the game has 3 million players already so far, and it's the best launch ever for a game in the entire franchise, second only to Valhalla.
And now we get to something very controversial. But guys, he is going to say something that nobody else thought about, or at least I haven't heard. I even didn't think about this. So yeah, there's something here that could change how we view if this game is successful or not. And yes, nobody did talk about it just before the upper echelon here. So let's hear him out. Really, let's hear.
Which came out at the apex of the COVID-19 video game industry boom, which is a black swan event. But anyway, disregard all of that because apparently the Steam charts don't have a super high player count number. And apparently the fact that they're saying 3 million players and not 3 million sales is evidence that the game is a failure, and thus Ubisoft is a failure. Here's the thing, if you make 30 videos in 6 months just repeatedly condemning the game with half of them identical headlines and as much vitriol as you can possibly insert into those videos, and you're saying it's the next big failure in video games over and over and over, if those videos get millions upon millions of views, thus earning tens of thousands of dollars, and if criticizing that game is the single largest bump in revenue, traction, and subscriber growth that you've ever seen on your channel, what happens when you're wrong? Short answer, if you're wrong, you're just not wrong. You can't be wrong. When you're part of the current generation anti woke phalanx, if you will, you cannot ever admit that you were wrong. It helps that they're all standing shoulder to shoulder with each other, making money every single step of the way. But when a game like Shadows comes out, and it's plenty successful, you have to just pretend it's not. Thankfully, Ubisoft is a very easy target for them. Ubisoft is on a downward trend, they've lost player support, they've lost shareholder support in particular, and most recently they had to secure a special subsidiary deal with Tencent, infusing over $1 billion at 25% equity, I believe, for their major franchises, spinning them off into a different company, just to stay operational. This is what's called a Pyrrhic victory for them, because it's certainly a victory, resulting in the company continuing on with significant runway while avoiding the prospect of losing control or being subjected to some sort of hostile takeover. But it's a victory that comes at a time, and with such a cost, it's not exactly a moment for celebration. However, the argument that I see plastered everywhere right now is that Assassin's Creed Shadows was the final nail in Ubisoft's coffin. They needed this game to be a success, this was their last hope, and it failed. But with every ounce of sincerity that I can muster here, Anyone who's saying that is kind of a fucking moron. Fixating on the fact that Ubisoft is saying 3 million players instead of sales figures, even when those sales figures are likely well in excess of 2 million copies already,
Here it comes, guys. Here it comes. Listen up.
because the game is primarily console based and thus Steam charts is probably the dumbest way to try and measure its success. Fixating on the discrepancy between players and sales, those two words, is a losing perspective because, like we just said in the valid portion of criticism, Ubisoft builds out their games to maximize recurrent user microtransaction spending. Assassin's Creed Shadows is no different. 3 million players means 3 million people in the game world being subjected to their sales funnels, which they do have, by the way. They do the whole, you earn some free currency quickly, but it's not enough for anything cool type of trick, and all sorts of other psychological tactics. But the point I'm trying to make is that arguing this game's success or failure on the sticking point of, but they said 3 million players, not 3 million sales, is brain dead. The game is performing very well, no question there, and it's not the most successful entry in the Assassin's Creed franchise because of Valhalla and the Black Swan event.
Well, yeah, so that was it, guys, for the great revelation. Yeah, we have not considered the microtransactions in the game. And believe me, a lot of people would buy anything else, anything possible to go further in the game. They will buy the packs with the mounts and the new costumes and armor, whatever. So they're making millions upon millions, even microtransactions. So we forgot about that. If there are 3 million players, yes, there are gonna be 3 million people that are gonna be manipulated into buying one of those microtransactions. Not me, but other people that have more money to burn, they will totally do that, probably. So he has a huge point here, guys. Don't forget, think about that. But how do we know that those numbers, the 3 million players numbers, are actually correct? How do we know? We don't work at Ubisoft. We count on other sources to tell us. How do we really know? I can't tell you. But if it's a fact that there are 3 million players in the game, then it's a fact that that many of them, even if it's like 500,000 of them, they buy like a few things. That's so much money. Can't even calculate how much money is that. That's gonna be equivalent of millions of copies of the games sold, probably. I'm not sure if it's million, but could be. I mean, it could be. Tons of copies.
But it's the second most, and it comes at a time when they're spinning off franchises anyway while saving the business, which leaves me completely flabbergasted, I love that word, at why and especially how people are so intent on criticizing Ubisoft that they're just resorting to making things up. How about some icing on the metaphorical cake? People were getting up in arms and condemning Ubisoft yet again because the credits for this game are over 2 hours long. Is that a completely absurd length? Yes. Can games be made with a fraction of the resources, rivaling the quality at every turn? Also a resounding yes. But why on earth are we stooping that low in an effort to put down a game which is really genuinely not as bad as people said it would be? It reeks of desperation. Yes, Ubisoft is probably wasting insane amounts of money on dev positions that don't need to be there, across studios that have very little impact. If you want evidence of that happening, just think back to Skull and Bones. That's a whole different disaster. But why is that one of the sticking points? Game bad because too many people worked on the game? How does that make sense? It feels like we're witnessing the death of nuance right now. People get so entrenched in a position before something even comes out, because of culture war brain rot primarily, they just can't be objective when it finally does.
Yeah, that's kind of a bummer. I mean, Ubisoft just paid so many people to make this game where they probably didn't need to, and maybe that is because they created for themselves so many problems, they need other people to fix them. Who knows? Yeah, that's kind of ridiculous. Well, what the hell? It's just ridiculous. It's 2 hours of credits. Yeah.
Sure, there's monetary incentives in play as well, but that honestly feels like a choice. You can criticize a game for what you see in the pre release format, certainly, but when it finally comes out and doesn't have some of the problems that you expected it to have, or when it gets delayed and genuinely fixes some of the impending issues, you are allowed to change your opinion. That is okay to do. Instead of manufacturing reasons inauthentically why the game is a failure, when it really truly objectively is not one, maybe we can try taking in new information and rationally articulating why we perhaps don't like it ourselves, but are positively surprised by the way things changed or the stuff that they got right, instead of radicalizing along political lines before, during, and even after the product is released. Maybe we just look at what the product is, evaluate it for what it actually is. It doesn't have to be team sports. It can be, is the game good? But when the new age anti woke content creator army, because it is kind of a little army at this point, is making this much money with this much support, I find myself dejectedly assuming that common reason is a bit of a lost cause. I think the motivation is profit. I think they pick a target, they attack as hard as possible, doubling and tripling, quadrupling down if it results in clicks, subscribers, and revenue, and then they just roll the dice on whether or not any of it is defensible in the aftermath. If it's not, such as Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, the most recent example, they get real quiet real fast and they just walk away. If it is, they hold it up as a perpetual example of gamers winning against the woke mind virus.
There's certainly some creators like that, but again, not all.
But in the case of Shadows, they went so hard for so long that even now, when they are proven wrong, they cling to it for a final gasp of, look, I was right, even though they were not right.
Well, actually, they do think that they're right because they forgot the microtransaction angle. So yeah, so there. That's the thing. We all forgot about it. I forgot about it. I haven't talked about actually the success of the game or lack thereof. Now I am. So that's why I'm saying, but yeah, he's right. If a lot more people just invest in the game when they already have it, no matter if it's free. I mean, I have it for free from Games Planet, which I'm very grateful for. But I can decide to buy a ton of things if I was that type of a player, and they are going to benefit from me if I was that kind of a player. So even if the game is gifted for free, I can still be a customer of theirs, you know?
About it before moving on to the next target. Again, maybe it's because over the span of 7 or 8 years, I just kind of grew up. But looking around me now, I don't see productive critique of gaming trends as much anymore. I see profit motivated outrage, with little to no self reflection, where the only outcome is to bury the more legitimate problems under a deluge of manufactured garbage. It's not healthy, it doesn't help the industry, and it certainly doesn't end well if that type of shallow concern ends up being kind of the mainstream sticking points. Hopefully it changes. That's it. That's my effort to articulate why I'm actually not disappointed with Assassin's Creed Shadows as much as I thought I would be. Actually, I'm not really disappointed at all. I kind of like it. Despite some real severe problems, it does have issues. And this time, as opposed to my previous video on Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, I tried a lot harder to extend an olive branch and be more neutral. I think a lot of people outraged over this game, adamantly claiming it's a failure and condemning it 6 ways to Sunday for reasons they simply heard from social media, are brain dead and they're beneath the rest of us. But you get more flies with honey, and I don't really need to spike my blood pressure over all this. In the end, Assassin's Creed Shadows is a mixed bag with a lot of problems, but there's some real decent fun to be had, and there are redeeming qualities. And I plan on doing a full review when I'm finally done with it, but I have no idea when that'll be. Some great systems here, some good choices, and an actual attempt at innovation from Ubisoft, which maybe misses the mark in some respects, and obviously it's over monetized in a lot of their different decisions I disagree with, but at least they actually tried something. I have to stand up and commend them for that. They tried to break out of that formula. They did some different things. They took risks. I mean, you can't just hate them no matter what they do. Sometimes you have to give them some credit.
No, definitely not gonna give them credit for making me build my settlement, and nothing like in Valhalla, which was doable and just more understandable and just easier. I didn't have to spend so much time on it. It was just simpler. It didn't like overstay its welcome. Here, just so tedious and so annoying. I don't want to do it at all. I don't want to invest in my settlement. I just want to think about my character, not my settlement. Just the way they did, it's bad. So they shouldn't try to break off the mold. The mold was great. That's what I'm gonna say. As a long time, since the very beginning, Assassin's Creed fan, okay? I have been there.
If you want to support the channel, check out the links down below.
Okay, guys, check his video down below if you like to see it the way it's meant to be seen. Let me know what you think in the comments. But yeah, let's all be more objective and think, critically think, even think more. Just like I always say, judge any game or movie or anything at all in life, case by case basis. Sometimes it's not what you think, sometimes it's something else. You gotta dig deeper, you gotta see things not with your emotion, but with reason, and count the facts and then decide. Check the links down below, guys, if you like to support me. I do OnlyFans. I do non-explicit, non-corn content, just normal content at OnlyFans on the topics of fitness, health, nutrition, relationship advice. And guys, if you like, you can check my main channel that's about Warhammer 40k down below.